Let's talk a little bit about cancellation, because I know that people go in thinking I can cancel and should I cancel? And I also saw that you wrote a little bit about that. So what do you say? Well, let's explain first what cancellation means, and then what you say to students when they're thinking about canceling their course.
Yeah, sure. So let's say you took the LSAT and you feel like you didn't do well. That could be a couple of things. Maybe something catastrophic happened, like the fire alarm went off, there was a marching band outside, where the proctors were super distracting and didn't know what they were doing. If that happened, those could all be cases where cancellations are warranted, because you just basically know that you didn't score nearly close to where you typically score where you want to. If that's the case, fine, go ahead and cancel. But if instead you just have this vague sense of unease that something went wrong, but you can't put your finger on it, or maybe one particular logic game or one particular reading comprehension passage just didn't go as well as it could have, then I would say don't cancel. Maybe it's all in your head, or maybe it affected you by a couple of points. But since law schools don't average, there's really no downside to having the score on your record. And a lot of people who've ended up getting great scores, and I'm talking like 99th percentile scores, they had that vague sense of unease and they considered canceling. And it's a good thing they didn't, because they ended up with great scores on the record and they were done. So that's my thoughts. Generally, students who are considering canceling on average should not cancel most of the time.
It's so interesting that you point that out, because there's, in law school, we kind of have a saying that the worse you think you did, the better off you probably did on the exam. So in other words, if you walk out of an exam and say, I aced it, chances are you didn't ace it. And the reason why is you didn't look deeply enough at all the different tricks and you know, nooks and crannies of analysis. And if you think that you failed it, it's probably because you saw the overwhelming nature of all the material that we were asking you to identify. And so it sounds like the same is absolutely true with the LSAT, that if you think you did badly, you probably think you did badly because you knew enough to know what it takes to do super well. So that's really good advice. Yeah, because I do know a bunch of people who, a bunch of students who just kind of cancel and out of understandable insecurity. I'm not going to fault them because, you know, I get it. But to your point, and this is a really good one, now that law schools take the highest score, there's no reason to cancel. Unless you had like the flu or something, yeah. So
yeah, there's no reason to cancel most of the time. And the funny thing is that those who do the best on the LSAT, it's because they're critical and skeptical of everything. And that includes themselves sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You could have, you know, part of getting better at the LSAT is becoming more humble in what you can reasonably infer based on a situation or a set of facts and what you can't reasonably infer. And so that sense of not knowing how you did, it's extremely stressful, and that's understandable. And you don't want to avoid a disastrous score that would make you feel bad about yourself. Sure,
right.
Better to have a vague cancellation than a definite low score. But the thing is, it's actually not definitely a low score. And even if it's a few points below where you wanted it to be, no big deal. You can always retake.